All right, this is Paul, and essentially you finished chapter number 3. You're done. If you did the workbook, you did the lessons, you finished number 3. There's just, I said there's one more thing on the videotape I want to discuss. It's actually been discussed, excuse me, it's been discussed in the audio tapes and the workbook, but I just want to end this session with some of these thoughts. I think one of the ways of living with no regrets is to realize before something happens, to think about it in advance. You know, a lot of people have to lose everything they have before they value it. Think about that. Think about if you fight with your spouse a lot of times, but if you lost them, if something happened to them, if you really love them and something happened, you would regret it for the rest of your life. Think about if something happened to your children, if they went on drugs or they messed up their lives and they lived a life where it was very painful and they weren't happy. You would have a lot of regrets, you know. Or if you lost your children, or if you lost your house, or you lost even your job that you may hate, if it was just pulled out from under you. Think of things that if you lost them, what kind of pain you would feel. So like I said, sometimes we don't know what we have until we lose it. But wise people, they appreciate what they have. They appreciate and are thankful for all that they have. And they appreciate it at the moment, not after they lose it. After you lose it, it's a little bit too late. The only feeling you're going to have after you lose something, and then you start realizing how valuable it was, the only feeling you're going to have is a feeling of regret. So I want you to live with no regrets. I want you to go through a little exercise in your mind. I want you to think about the things that you have. And I want you to think of what would happen, how you would feel if something happened to them. You know, and how horrible your life would be. So you have so much right now. And just appreciate what you have. You know, some of you may not be the healthiest, but you still, most of you hopefully are not wheelchair. Some people I've taught have been in a wheelchair. In fact, you know, I have another book that at some point will be published, and I go into talking about my wheelchair friends. You know, during college, one of the jobs I had was helping people who were confined. Do you ever see those little trucks? They're almost like a little ambulance, and they have a little ramp where you can push a wheelchair up into and lock the wheelchair into the back of the van. Well, I drove one of those trucks in the Chicago area when I was going to college. That was one of my jobs, and the interesting thing is that I noticed that to me it was like a gross job, because a lot of these people had kidney problems, they couldn't move, they were on dialysis, and they'd sometimes vomit inside the van, and I'd go, boy, and it used to depress me to look at them. I go, man, this was really a tough job. And I used to ride in the beginning with another person, and you know, it wasn't always easy getting these people in and out of the van, up and down stairs. A lot of buildings in the tenements didn't have elevators, and some of these people lived 4 or 5 stories up and narrow, winding stairs, and some of these people were overweight, and it was a hard job, but it was a lot of mentally defeating. But I noticed something. Some of these people, I mean, the only contact they had with other people in their lives was that visit sometimes once or twice a week to the hospital for treatment. And that's their lives. The rest of their lives they were stuck in a wheelchair in a little run-down apartment building in the middle of a ghetto. And I think I learned a lot from that job, and it shaped me and impacted my life. At the time, when I did it, it was a little bit, in the beginning, like I said, gross, and I didn't like the job. But I learned to like it. I learned a lot from that job. And let me just explain something to you. What really transformed me and changed me is one day I noticed that the person sitting in that wheelchair strapped in the back of my van had the biggest smile on their face. They were happy. And I didn't want to even talk to these people. I just sort of avoided them and ignored them. And I remember taking this person, excuse me, taking this person to the hospital, wheeling them up to the ramp of the hospital, through the hospital doors, to a person, a nurse. And that was a moment of enlightenment for me, because that nurse smiled at that person and the person smiled back. And I noticed that they had a relationship. That nurse loved that person. They just had a loving, caring, nurturing relationship. That nurse was very nurturing, and it made that person in the wheelchair happy. It made him smile. Later, when I picked up the person after a treatment, this is one of the first conversations I had with any of the people in the wheelchairs. And the person explained to me that how they look forward to that day of visiting the hospital because that nurse was so kind to them and happy, and that was their only friend in life. That was their only contact with human people, with other people, was that day when they went for treatment. The rest of their lives they sat alone. So from that day forward, I committed myself to talking to the people that I picked up, getting to know them, and helping them. So I helped them. I talked to them, I get to know them, I became friends with them, and I committed and determined that I would be a person that they would look forward to seeing when I picked them up. And it was a tough job. I mean, at this time, this was in Cabrini Green, and it was noted for, this tenement was noted for, the people would sit on top of the roof house and literally shoot at police. I mean, this was at one point, it was a common occurrence. And I remember, I didn't always go to this one development, but I remember going to development and I'd get out of my van, I'd be like looking up, wonder if somebody's going to be shooting at me. And then I'd get in the wheelchair and then I'd go, and this building had elevators, but some of them didn't. And I remember I did go up, I was alone at this point, after you were trained, you'd go alone. And I'd go up these winding staircases, and it would be the hardest thing in the world. Every fabric of muscle, I'd be sweating. It'd take 15 minutes, step by step, to get these people down the stairs. And normally I'd be like cussing under my breath, but after I got to know these people, it was a joy, a privilege to move them down those stairs. And then we'd have long conversations, and I'd try to cheer them up, and they cheered me up. I learned the principle of not focusing on the negative things in my life through helping these people. I just, so I want you to focus and appreciate what you have. Appreciate what you have. My friends in the wheelchair, and I call them my wheelchair friends, they don't have legs, some of them. They couldn't walk. Some of them couldn't live a normal life. They didn't have friends. They didn't have money. But you know one thing they had? A smile on their face. And that smile came because somebody cared. Somebody took the time to care about them. So the things that flow into your life flow out of you. So I let the things flow into them. I try to cheer them up. So I just want you to be thankful, grateful for what you have. For what you have. And appreciate it now, today, before it's taken away from you. Think about it. And that's part of what financial wisdom is. It's to think ahead, to think in advance. And we're going to be doing exercises on what I call a timeline. And I'm introducing it to you now. I want you to think in advance. I want you to look at your life, picture it in the future. If certain people were missing, certain people you cared about, think about in the future. Look at your future with them missing. How would you feel? And then, if you'd feel really bad, I want you to come back on that timeline to your present moment and think about whether and how you should be appreciating them and how you should be treating them and how you should be sharing your positive thoughts and energy with them. I want you to picture my wheelchair friends and how their lives were, what type of life they were living. And if you think your life's tough and it's so hard and difficult and you hate your job and you're not happy with your neighborhood, you're not happy with your house, your kids are fighting, your spouse is angry with you, you're not eating right, you're not healthy as you could be, I want you to stop. I want you to think about those people in the wheelchair. The ones that were crippled, the ones that were on kidney dialysis, that only had a short period of time to live, that for them to live they had to be hooked up on a basis sometimes every day to a machine or they would die, and how they'd get sick from the treatment and how they'd be sitting alone hour after day in a wheelchair in their apartment by themselves in poverty with nothing to look forward to. Think about what you have. Start appreciating what you have. The concept is not to live a life, it's to improve your life, to make it a little better. But like I said, to be happy, you don't need a lot of money. To be healthy, you don't need a lot of money. And to be prosperous, to feel prosperous, you don't need to be rich. Just work at all these areas. We're going to use this timeline and other examples to where we project into the future to see, hey, if I took these steps, what would I get? We want to see, picture your life happy, picture it healthy if you follow certain steps. Is that the life you want? Life full of wisdom? Then you need to do certain things today. Eventually I want you to live a life so that you can be an inspiration to others, so that you are so full of positive energy, positive thoughts, love, that it flows out of you so that you become a lighthouse, an inspiration for other people, so that your life is so together that you can go out and you're strong enough to help other people. That's going to bring you more happiness, more joy. If we become selfish and self-centered, that cuts off our source of happiness. Happiness comes from being generous, from giving, from caring, from sharing, not from being selfish, not from wanting more and more materialistic goods. It comes from being generous. So I want you to focus on these things. I want you to learn the timeline. I want you to learn this principle. And I'm sorry I got a little emotional, but man, that was just a powerful time in my life. And those people shaped me. That created me. And without that experience, I don't think there'd be a Financial Wisdom Seminar. And without the Financial Wisdom Seminar, the thousands and thousands of people that I helped turn their lives around, that wouldn't have happened. So you see, even in negative circumstances, there's a positive sign. In the Orient, and I studied a lot of Oriental principles, and they're Asian principles, and they're integrated into the Financial Wisdom Seminar. And in one of the Asian principles, one of their signs for opportunity is the same symbol for opportunity is also adversity, because in their philosophy of life, they believe that adversity, bad circumstances, bad events are a good thing, because through adversity comes opportunity. So that's a way of looking at life, and that helps you become happy too, because you look at the negative things in your life saying, you look at them two ways. You can say, poor me, and oh, why did it happen to me? And yeah, that's human instinct, and you may still do that, but then wise people go a step further and they rise above that reaction, and they look at the negative thing and they go, well, how can this be an opportunity for me? And that day in that little ambulance van, that day when I saw that smile on that person's face, and I saw the relationship of that nurse and how they were able to share love, that was a day of enlightenment. That was a day that I saw and recognized that adversity, that negativity was an opportunity, that in that negativity there was a positive thing, something positive came out of it. And so no matter how deep and dark and bad your circumstances are, remember, there's a ray of hope. There's always hope. There's always opportunity. There's always a way to overcome the negative circumstances that you find yourself in. So hopefully, I hope your life's not as bad as the life of those people in the wheelchairs. But if it is, then you may already know more than most people that don't. And you know that it's in your attitude, it's in your beliefs, and your life is created from within yourself. I also studied other material. There's a man, Ken Keyes, who wrote a book, Handbook to Higher Consciousness, and I learned a lot about happiness through that handbook. And I read that book 15 or more years ago, and I go, boy, this guy is very interesting. It's very interesting, you know, his principles of happiness, and I'll use some of those principles here, and I'll be teaching them the levels of consciousness to you. But I didn't find out until a couple years ago that Ken Keyes was actually in a wheelchair. His whole life while he was writing this, he was in a wheelchair, and I was never aware of that. But I found that pretty fascinating. But you can understand, no matter your circumstances, you can be happy. No matter your circumstances, you can improve your health. Even if you're in a wheelchair, you can eat better, you can be healthier, you're more restricted, and hopefully you're not in that position. But if you're not, start being grateful that you're not. Be thankful for what you have. Be thankful that you have legs. You know, a lot of people look at handicapped parking and they go, oh boy, you know, they get all the best parking spots. But you know something? They can walk, you can walk, and many of those people can't. Just be thankful, be grateful, start improving your life. Start before you lose it and your health gets even worse than what it is, before your relationship, even if it's in a bad place now, before it gets to the point of where it's totally broken and destroyed, before your finances slip even deeper or you lose your finances. Be thankful for what you have. Then be committed. Be committed to this course. Be committed to financial wisdom, and do all that you can to make your life better. And hopefully one day you'll be a person that can help other people. So, this is Paul Barrett. I just want to say once again, God bless you. Thank you very much for doing the lessons, and I hope that you just go home now and you do all the lessons in the workbook and you take these lessons to heart. God bless you. Thank you very much. This is Paul Barrett saying goodbye till next week. But do those lessons, do your lessons, and be thankful and grateful throughout the week. And I'll see you in chapter number 4.